So, officially, hello to everyone, and welcome to the Healthy Leader Expert Forum. This is where we get to have real human conversations about what it takes to lead with clarity and presence and alignment. So, whether you are a inner circle member or if you're a guest, we're really glad that you're here. And today's theme, or this month's theme, is time optimization. And I could say time management, but really, we'll hear that it's not really about that, that it's really more about energy and intention and presence. So it's something that we can lead intentionally. So it is my privilege to introduce today's guest, Ulrika Brattemark, who is a time management coach and a strategic advisor who specializes in time optimization and intentional leadership. And she has had over 2 decades of experience as a leader in corporate America. And now she helps high impact professionals shift from reactive to intentional, from overwhelmed to focused. And she helps them to basically combine agile methodologies and some neuroscience-backed tools, which we'll talk about, to approach their time and priorities and basically presence, as we said before. So the last thing I'll share with, and I can attest to because Ulrika has done some coaching for me personally, is that she's known for a very for her strong presence, for her clear-eyed approach, and her ability to kind of cut through the noise and has a deep commitment to helping people lead with purpose. So, officially, Ulrika, welcome to the Healthy Leader Expert Forum.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be here.
Yes, yes, we're super excited to have you. So, I wanted to just ask you to share a little bit of your background and how you got where you are today and how you went from corporate America to helping professionals.
Yeah, so I left corporate. It's 13 years ago now. I had been there, like you said, for a couple of decades. I think look at sort of the short version of it is that I had worked at this company in different countries. I'm from Sweden originally, so it's always like to point out where the accent is from, so you don't have to sit there and wonder. So just working so many years in corporate, I sort of just ended up in that career. It was great. I learned a lot. And it was also like for several, like the last decade of the two, I would say, I was kind of like, there's something else. There's something else that I'm more passionate about, something that I really want to do. So
Mhm.
I really started pursuing other careers as a side gig, essentially. And then it became time when I decided to resign, which was a huge deal. I'm not sure exactly who's in the audience here, but I sort of had the golden handcuffs. Like it was so good in so many ways, but it wasn't right. It wasn't like what I wanted to do for yet another decade.
Right, right.
um, yeah. So then I went out, and then at one point I discovered that well, leaving corporate, I sort of threw out the baby with the bathwater, I'm done with that, all of it, it's behind me. Now I'm going to do coaching.
Yeah.
And then in some kind of exercise I went through, I realized that, hold on, there's some really good things that I know thanks to that career. And then agile, this approach, it was actually one of the things that I now apply both my own personal time management and also in what I teach and coach and my book. So,
Yeah, right. And so when you say an agile approach, what does that actually mean?
so agile in software development sort of sense means it's a very iterative process. So, and I think it and very kind of human centered. So instead of project management where you have this big plans and sort of a long cycle, you're working more, okay, what's the thing we're creating in this week or this couple of weeks? And be super clear on being agile, being responsive
Mm,
to what's actually happening versus what should be happening according to the big plan.
Right, 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 right. And
Yeah.
and you used a keyword which is responsive, which when I read your book, I think I texted you. I was like, or emailed you. I was like, I love this. This is so perfect. And one of the things that you start off with is this four-step process where you start with your intentions. So will you kind of walk us through that process and share with us why you structured uh, this process that way?
Yeah, so it actually is informed by the software development sort of methodology because you do, in that method, you do, instead of writing requirements, you focus on user stories. So that is actually saying, as a whatever user you are, what is it truly that you're trying to create or need? Versus I want this feature. No, but hold on. What is it really that you want that feature for? How is it going to serve your business, your customer, etc.? So applying that then to our personal lives, I actually, even one step before intention, I look at, instead of looking at kind of what's my purpose in life or what is the thing I'm going to do, it gets so big that, like, how do you even start to get clarity?
Right,
So
right,
instead, look at, I think of it as different roles in my life or roles and responsibilities, but it's sort of areas of your life. So as a mother, what is it really, really that's important to me? And spend some time there to go, not the first thing that comes to mind, not the standard answer, but hold on. What is it truly that matters?
right. This is huge.
Yeah, because when we get that clarity, and that both clarity and connection, like that connection is like, oh, yes,
Right,
we feel the juiciness of it.
right.
That then can inform, all right, what do I take on? What do I say yes to? What do I say no to? What do I spend my days, time, energy, everything on that supports that intention,
Right.
all the way down to task. And then when I'm doing tasks, I know that if I've gone through that process, I know even this boring, tedious, whatever task I have to do, I know that, ooh, it's helping me, go there.
Get to your intention, get to your vision.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's interesting. I know there's four aspects of it, and we're just really hitting the intention and even like, and so what we call it in our six-step process, the first one is your vision. Like, what is your vision? And
Mhm.
in terms of roles and responsibilities, it's interesting because when I was doing your worksheet, the way that I organize it is I said, okay, in terms of my private relationships, which we define as my relationship with myself or my relationship with my higher power, or the way that I talk to myself. And I wrote body caretaker and spiritual guide. And so those are really important roles for me. And then personal. What are my family roles? And then professional. So, of course, it totally jives. And when you talk about roles and then you add on responsibilities, especially, I know that we have some HR people here. We're talking about sometimes that isn't even defined professionally. Like, we're like, have you found that to be the case?
And like that, it's not super clear what my true purpose in my role.
Or my response,
Yeah,
yeah, I know the name on my role, but what am I actually responsible for? So you add that piece in, which I think is really important. Like, what is the area
yeah,
of responsibility?
yeah. And even the intention, for the most part, people don't go deep enough.
Mhm.
You start by saying, like, this is what I want or this is what I do, but keep going. Like, so what? Like, what's important about that, or what does that lead to? What truly matters about that? Because that's when you get to like the, oh yes, like I can't not go for that. Yeah,
That's what you said is the juicy part, right?
yeah,
That's the
right.
juicy, right. So that's really cool because it makes me think about when I talk with someone and they say, "Hey, I want to have more confidence," or "I want to, have a healthier body." And then I say, "Okay, why?" And sometimes I get a little side eye like, "Oh, isn't it obvious?" And
Yeah,
it's not.
right.
it's not. It's different for different people.
Yeah, right. And then sometimes too, I don't know, I coached someone many years ago and she wanted to get in shape. And when we dug deeper, she actually realized I see myself a long hike up a steep mountain and I'm getting to the top and I'm feeling good and like, yes, I made it without, huffing and puffing, getting off. So, and then that, she just got this like visceral feeling of that's how I want to feel.
Right.
And then that motivated her to, whatever, go to the gym, eat healthier, all of that. Cause it's like, yeah, I'm at the top of that mountain,
Yeah.
feeling that success.
And
Yeah.
I want to pull that thread a little bit because I think when you get someone to start to talk about that and they're like, oh, I'm at the top of the mountain. Oh, and now it's freedom and I feel strength. And now and it's getting very visceral, is that they actually are experiencing that in the moment, even though they're not at the top of the hill, and that they can
Yeah.
create that energy, that intention, even without the result, even without the weight loss or without actually being on the mountain. And it's part of our process is okay, how do you cultivate that connection, as you referenced, continually, so that when it's the alarm goes off, you're like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed. Like, you're okay, but remember, this is our intention, this is our vision, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that I would say in combination is sort of a tangent maybe, but in combination with lowering the hurdle. So making it as easy as possible to engage in the activity that you know is actually supporting your intention.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. That's great. Lowering the hurdle. I love that. Yeah, talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that. What does that mean?
Well, if we have, we have habits, tendencies, whatever, things we do on autopilot, things that just kind of keep going. So if we're used to, I don't know, let's say I'm used to just hitting the snooze button and staying in bed and just like, oh, I don't want to get up to exercise.
Right, we all know that feeling
It's hard to break any of those things you're in. It's hard to break. So
very
one
much.
thing we can do is to make it as hard as possible to do the bad behavior and easy as possible to do the one. So maybe I put my alarm clock, way over in the other end of the room. So I at least have to get out of bed.
Right,
You make it hard to snooze basically
right, right.
and make it easy as possible. Like, this is, maybe my walking shoes are right there and I have a sticky note that says, go outside or, whatever.
Yeah.
Just something like, oh, I can do that. I can put on my shoes. I can do that. I can do one little
One,
thing that takes me in the right direction.
I really like that because I think what you're talking about is setting up the external environment, moving the alarm clock, putting the shoes down, so visually seeing a sticky note, and the connection that I think what happens is that when we talk about, at least in self leadership, is there's mental, emotional, and physical energy, right? So the fit, if you're, and that's all internal. So we work on that, and that's what we're focusing on. So that alarm goes off, you're like, okay, how do I get the motivation in that moment? How do I have the mindset? And then if you open up an eye and the external environment is the alarm's way over there. So it's the external environment supporting the internal environment at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 great.
So with
Mm.
the external environment, I see right behind you that you have your work, right? It's behind
Yeah,
your shoulder. Will you
that's my Kanban board.
Yes. Yeah. Will you speak a little bit to that in terms of, because that's an environment that helps us follow through and set our intentions. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, actually, I'll say a little bit about leaving corporate. That was a big step for me to set up my environment the way I actually want it. It was so easy to be in sort of cubicle mode. It was like almost supposed to be kind of gray and square. It's like,
Mhm.
no, it doesn't need to be. I love colors, so I'm gonna have colors.
I love.
So it's part of the environment, but also I really love. I usually work in my office, so I don't have to be super mobile with my tasks, but there are ways to do that as well. But I do the tactical. It gives me So much, surprisingly still, so much satisfaction to move a sticky from, to do, to
That's,
doing, to done.
we all want the gold
Like,
star, right?
yeah. So, and it's tactile. You can work with colors and all of that if you want to. But I loved your post, by the way, about it's not about color coding your chaos. It's about something much earlier. So we first have to do the intentions, get that all, so we don't just have like a bunch of to-dos.
Right, right. Yes. And that's interesting. And I think that that was a little bit of projection on my part because I'm so good at color coding and organizing and, and color coding my closet and doing all this stuff. And then I'm like, oh, wait, what was it I was supposed to be doing?
Uh, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's actually the case. One reason to do like sticky notes or something super minimalistic, tactile, is that you don't get caught up in learning the software or sort of trying to fit into some tool that someone else created. So it's probably not going to be perfect for you.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. So it becomes a distraction for a lot of people to figure out the tool or what's the next best tool. And but hold on, are you even doing the like foundational work of what do you want? Is it really that you're trying to create or go
Right.
for?
Well, okay, let's hold the Kanban board for a second. And before we lose the initiative piece, right? So you said, so you have four steps, right? And so the first one is intentional. And then the second one has to do with an initiative. So can you, because that's some strong work too. So what's the difference and what's the connection? Mhm.
Yeah. So I think of it more as a structure than steps, but I guess it's sort of its steps, but you can come from one end or the other. But if you go kind of top down, you would get clear on your intentions for each of the roles in your life. And maybe you start with your three primary roles. Don't go crazy with trying to have to cover everything. But
Right.
maybe, me as, a business owner and a partner and a, mother or whatever seems like this is really important. And then you decide, so in order to fulfill that intention, what's a project initiative, like what's something I could really take on that I feel would move, help me go in that direction, move the needle, towards that. And
Mhm.
then that might be sometimes it's a several year long project, who knows? It's like how big you can come up with something really big. Or it's something like, in the next month, I want to implement this. Or, sometimes a sort of a project is implementing a new habit.
Mhm.
Like sometimes it's a time bound thing, like I'm done and then I'm done. And sometimes it's more of a putting something in place that becomes my new normal,
Right.
but that supports that intention. Yeah. And then that becomes the task. And then you break it down further so that on your daily to do list, you have tasks that say, do this, like a verb and a noun,
Right.
draft proposal, write email.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I like how you organize that. And
How
then
do I organize it?
when you said a verb and a noun, I remember you reading that like that's a task, right? It's a verb and a noun, it's something to do. And then let's finish it up with the fourth right area is that what's the difference in a task and an action?
Well, it is, doing the task. So it's basically until you have tasks, it's all theory. And then, all right, now you got to do it. And during the doing, of course, try to not have too many distractions, try to do one thing at a time versus, task switching and, yeah, so it's completing the task really.
Yeah. Yeah. And the completion of that task, I think that that also is where we get into, oh, here it is. I say to people, here it is on your calendar, and you run up right against it. And right there is where we get to see what your mindset looks like and your emotions and your energy and how do you go through that task and complete it versus just saying, okay, I'm going to try something else, and go around and switch to something else that's more important, or that when you'll have more energy, or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
And
And
so,
that actually it keeps happening. Like I might be a time management coach, but I procrastinate, I avoid, I come up with all sorts of creative ideas sometimes. But the thing, I think so sort of back to what we talked about a little bit earlier with habits,
yeah.
you gotta like start catching yourself. If you can catch yourself more frequently and sooner, you start to kind of get out. So if you have a habit of, avoiding that thing that needs to be done, or like, oops, now I'm dusting my shelves. Like, how did that happen?
Cleaning out my drawers.
Yeah,
All right.
because each time it happens, well, first of all, I think a lot of self-compassion is really, it's a good place to just, all right,
Just know.
it's okay. This is what's happening. But what is it telling me? Like, what is it about that task? Get curious,
I love it.
actually.
Hmm.
What
Yeah.
is it about that task that I'm avoiding? Like, oh, maybe I'm assuming that it's going to be a difficult conversation, or maybe whatever I'm making up about this task, or maybe oftentimes actually it wasn't clear enough. So the task is a little bit vague,
Mm.
too big. Like maybe it is like, write that proposal. And
Right.
it's like, that's something you just sit down and do. Maybe it's, I don't know, just frame it or create an outline or call, make a phone, talk to this other person to get some more clarity. Like the first step might be much smaller, but you haven't clarified that. So then it's just this kind of, ooh, that feels too big, too complicated, and therefore I'm avoiding it.
And then bye bye. Right. I got to go clean out the drawer. The interesting thing about that is that I have been experiencing that when you said write a proposal, and I have gotten so specific. I feel a little silly saying this. It's like open the email, review what the email said.
Yeah,
I'm giving
yeah,
myself like a little check. Oh, I opened the email. Check. I reviewed what it said, but then it does. Then there go. That's how we go from our potential to kinetic energy. We go from thinking about doing it, having the task written down, and actually taking some action on the task. And I think that's a really important transition from potential. Here's the task. I organized it. I know it's part of my values. Oh shoot, now it's time to do it. And in that moment, there's a lot of self work to be done potentially.
yeah. And that's another way of lowering the hurdle, like the entry. Just make that, yeah, open the email. Okay, I can do that.
I can do that, right? It
And
sounds
then, especially when we notice like something is on my to-dos, like something I've said I would do yesterday and today, and it's like, why is it still sitting there? Like,
right.
oh, I actually don't even know, whatever. I need to first do this.
Yeah. That makes me think about this idea of, I was just speaking with somebody about this, planning to plan.
Mhm.
Talking about, the planning to plan, and maybe this will get into the Kanban board as well. But so what do you have to say about that? Setting up time to plan.
Yeah, so important. Yeah. Actually, I would say setting up time to reflect and plan.
Oh, okay.
Because
Yeah.
the reflecting is like this is we're never going to be done. And
Right.
unfortunately, or
Or
fortunately, it
fortunate.
depends how you see it. But we'll
Right.
be in new situations with new people, new whatever. And then
Right.
we're going to keep learning, keep growing. So if, but the more often we look at things, kind of like that task that I was avoiding, if I don't reflect on like, hey, what's going on there? Why am I not just doing it? if I don't do that reflection, I'm just going to either have to like push myself to just like, come on, what's wrong with you? Just go do it.
Right, right.
Or some kind of other kind of energy. But then the planning, so I propose that you plan like just in time. So you plan things that are near in the future, you plan to a much more detailed level, and things that are further out, you just kind of leave them kind of vague. It's fine. Once we get closer, we'll get more granular. So at least I would say probably the most important planning, what is it called, frequency, I would
Mhm.
say is weekly.
Okay. Oh.
Because if you can stop at some point, whatever is the end of the week, beginning of the week for you, but like I like to do Friday afternoon. I don't, have book meetings or anything at the very end. It's
Hmm.
my wind down, wrap things up, reflect on the week, and actually do a rough plan for the coming week so that things are sort of out of my head. I have a rough plan already so
Hmm.
that I don't have to think about like carry it with me sort of over the weekend.
Right. Great. Love
And then
that.
on Monday morning, I just kind of pick that up and say, okay, where was I? Okay, fine tune a few things, whatever. And that's just, 10 minutes maybe.
Right.
So that way, because I like to start my week in action. Like I'm very impatient on Monday morning to, oh, let me do the big picture and think and reflect. It's like, no, I want to get moving. So
Mhm.
that's why I do it that way. But that's also something I've discovered from doing this weekly reflection. It's like, that didn't quite happen, or that didn't wasn't good timing for me. Oh, let me try this.
Oh,
Because then you're only ever 1 week kind of off.
that is brilliant. I love that. And also it's very customized to you. And I think I'm the same way and I didn't realize it till just this moment, right? Like I'm ready to go
Mm,
on Mondays and I have been using that as my planning time.
yeah.
And
Okay.
I
And
feel
that just doesn't feel natural or right for you.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, I really got to get myself psyched up to do it. I'm like, okay, this is the beginning of the week. So that's really interesting. Oh, I like that. And that's, as you're saying, the benefit of actually putting something down on paper, planning it, doing it, and then saying, oh, reflection. That actually didn't even work for me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And then not throw it all out and say, oh, that didn't work. It's like,
Right.
what about work? Like, what is it that's not kind of clicking? And because I hear people say, like, oh, time blocking. I've tried it. It didn't work for me. It's like, okay. But like, what about it? How did you do it? In for what kind of tasks? It's just like you have to sort of figure out
Right.
how it can support you. Any process, any tool, any system, really.
Right. Right. So let's talk about your system that's back behind you.
Yeah, so I do, well, you only see part of it. So over on my other side here, I have my more long-term kind of board. This is my weekly board. So I have each of the days of the week, and I just have my whatever I committed to, either committed to myself or committed to someone else, is up there as a
Yeah.
task.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, what about it? What would you like to
As
know?
I'm looking at it, I see Monday and Tuesday are clear. Clearly, you did, you've got a few things. You haven't moved everything on Wednesday, it looks like. So do you put
Yeah,
everything on there, like administrative, or is it just tasks that are related to your initiatives?
I actually put everything on there. Yeah. And oh, and then I have that's my weekly plan, and I have my daily plan right next to me. So
Oh,
I sort of have it's kind of nerdy, like you don't have to, like I actually always hesitate to tell people exactly what I do because like this is what has evolved into working for me. But essentially I have the bigger, the long-term planning on the wall over here. So
uh-huh.
at the beginning of the week, I say like, okay, what do I have? What's next? What are some things that I need to break down a little bit more granular because it was kind of like a vague or big task?
Right.
Break it down. And then I put it on this board saying, okay, how does this fit into my actual schedule and sizing the tasks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then at the beginning of the day, I bring them from there to my daily board, which is right to the left of my screen. And then I do something, and then I move it over to the right. I have my done for the week.
So
So I have my
fulfilling.
little done for the week.
Wow, I love it. It is fulfilling, right?
Yeah, it's very fulfilling, and then it's a lot of little paper slips and stuff, but it's I know exactly what they mean, and they are in the place. I can trust that I've thought through everything that has to happen. It's up there, and I know what's on today's schedule, so I don't have to go and look. Where was I with the whatever project? It's like, no, I've already decided what's this week and what's today.
Yeah, that's brilliant. As we're talking about that, I had mentioned that we had a couple of people talking about what their biggest time challenges were, and
Mhm.
someone just wrote the word morning. And so I asked her, I emailed her, I said, "Hey, Judy, what do you mean by this?" And so basically, I want to read to you what she said. She said, I've long viewed time efficiency as a function of my energy, and morning is when I have the least amount of energy. I've learned to honor that and ease into my day, given our culture's emphasis on morning is the key to everything. Work out in the morning. How do you start your day? All of that. So I was interested in hearing Ulrika's thoughts about those of us for whom morning is more about being than doing. What do you say to Judy?
I would say, yay, you have discovered something that works for you. Like all of these, like, oh, successful people, oh, they do this in the morning. It's like, no,
I am,
I
right?
don't, eat a frog in the morning. I don't do the most difficult task first. I need a little ramp up. So I do a bunch, a few little things first, and then I'm ready for the big stuff. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I'm sure that works for some, but if it doesn't quite sit right, trust that. That's awesome to know that about yourself.
Yeah. I think you just said something that was very key, which was trust that, trust you, trust
Mm.
your energy. You have a worksheet on that as well. Like what are the re-energizers and what are your drains and managing our energy. So I think this might be a good time. We may or may not have even gotten into this, but one of your key lessons is that we don't manage time, right? We manage our energy. And then on page 22, you say our attention, our expectations. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think that if we think we're going to manage time, it's like, what is it? What are you trying to like? You can't like shuffle it around and put it somewhere. It just is. Like time is moving whether you
Right?
try to manage it or not. Like it's just kind of a weird thing to call it time management. And still, I call myself a time management coach because that's what people
That's what people
kind of
right.
understand.
Right.
Yeah, but so I think instead to try to so instead of our goal being to manage our time, our goal being to create a rich experience of time because we can control different things in how we approach that helps us create a rich experience of time. And that just wants me, I just want to take a big breath and just, yeah, like, because this is my life. Like, that's how I see time management, that I'm choosing what to do with my life essentially when I'm choosing what to do in this moment, this day. And it's easy to just be so sucked into this. Yeah, the person you were mentioning saying this, all the expectations around us is that we're going to be like produce, and up early and whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, of course, to some extent, we have to kind of put in the work and we have to
Of
do
course.
our job and all of that. But it is our life. I think that's how precious time is.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I think that that is the most powerful message right there is that it's not about, we often talk about being in the present moment. So like, how do you do that? Oh, here's the second. Oh, wait, there's another one. Oh, wait, there's another one. Like that's not what that means, right? We're not doing the seconds and oh, there's another minute. Oh, but really your experience of it as you're
Yeah.
saying.
I can be here, like right now, I can feel my feet on the floor, my butt in the seat. I can take in your beautiful smile. And like, wow, I get to do this.
Right. That's all about
And
experience.
this is what I will remember as a rich experience
Hmm.
versus, I don't know, rushing, trying, you're always like, if we're always in our head, we're usually either in the past or in the future. Like it's very hard to be present, be right here and be in our head. Like usually it goes one way or the other.
Right. It's yeah, you're either there or you're here. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I started doing and doing this thing about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, where I really wanted to clean out my basement, but I did not want to do it. So I was like, okay, every morning I know that I'm going to go down and work out at 7 o'clock. So at 6:45, I'm going to go down and I'm going to spend just 10 minutes on the basement.
Yeah.
So what I noticed is that I tell this story where, my daughter had this huge teddy bear that was just way too big, and I was like, "Why is this even in our house anymore?" She got it from a boyfriend in high school, and
I was
it's
going to say, who bought this to her?
not this stupid teddy bear. And at some point, I was trying to move it, and its paw was like stuck, and I found myself just like re- wrestling with this teddy bear, and then all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh my goodness." Why am I creating this experience? And
Mm.
it became very clear to me in those little 10-minute segments that they were little mirrors for my energy, right? And how am I
Mm.
approaching this? Am I, making sure that I get every single thing and pick it all up so I can all be really efficient?
Mhm.
Is it I'm just going to move this pen over to this side and put it down? So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think you speak a little bit about presence and creating and cultivating experiences. And I think that that is the most powerful message. Would you agree with that?
Uh, Presence. Yeah, because presence helps you become aware. And then like awareness can help you be more like purposeful, less reactive. It's almost like we need to like just stop doing for just a moment because we're like busy accomplishing. And
Yeah,
then we kind of miss being in the moment and actually landing.
yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Uh,
And I think that the presence, um, I wanted to make sure I mentioned the three different ways that I think what you can manage to
mm,
create a rich experience of time, because that's also like part of
yeah,
pausing equals being present in my mind. You're just like, okay, hold on, let's slow things down just a little bit so I can actually know what's going on here.
and
And
be
then you can manage, instead of trying to manage time, you manage your attention. So, like what you were talking about the basement, if your attention is on just like, oh, I just want to get rid of all this stuff, and it's just kind of my attention is just about versus you can put your attention on what is that you're creating, what do you want? Like that's a mindset or kind of way of thinking.
totally. Yep.
Uh, you can put your attention on all the things that are still on your to-do list and not give any credit to the things you have actually accomplished. That's something I see so often
Hmm.
because it's never ending. It will never end.
Right.
For anyone who's a little bit, driven, ambitious, you will always have a to-do list.
Right. That's
But
powerful.
then put your attention on like, oh, damn, I did this. And that's one of the reasons I like this accumulation of sticky notes, like, because I
Mhm.
see I really accomplished things and I can you know, feel good about it.
That is
Um,
really powerful because very often I'll ask somebody, what went well, like at the beginning of a coaching session, and they'll go to what didn't go well very, very quickly. They'll start with what went well, and they'll say, "Oh, but you know what? I didn't do this, and I didn't do that, and then da 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 da." And it's very easy for us to forget the good, but you got
mm,
a pile of
yeah,
sticky notes.
yeah, right. Yeah, forget. It's easy to forget. So
Yeah,
attention. So attention and then energy, you already mentioned, but we can manage our energy. And I think the way I like to think of these attention, energy, and expectations is kind of a lens, like three different lenses you can use when you're like, huh, what's happening here? And say, like, where's my attention? Oh, maybe I'm distracted. So it's like, oh, it's actually kind of all over the place. Okay, hold on. Let's bring it back to this one task I actually said I would do. That's
yes.
attention management.
Hmm.
Or you go like, oh, I'm feeling super like anxious. It's like, oh, I realize this other thing happening later. I need to make sure I, put that on my calendar there so I don't forget. Okay, whew. Then that's maybe like out of my
Right.
energy pull kind of
Uh-huh.
situation.
Uh-huh.
Or expectation management is about my expectations of myself. So, just how much am I expecting to accomplish in a day, for example? Usually, everyone overestimates like crazy and then never feel like it's kind of good enough done at the end of the day. But it's also often about expectations, or like I'm assuming that others have expectations of me, or I have like perfectionist sort of levels of expectation in the quality of my work. But really, like 90% of that would actually be enough
Right.
for whoever it's for. So when whatever is going on, actually, we can say, like, what expectations, what's going on here? Like, ooh, I was assuming so and so, or I am beating myself up because I don't know, whatever expectations I have of myself.
Right. Interesting. I like how you organize those as lenses. And I think that you and I talked about energy overall. And I'm thinking when I look at this is that when you're pausing, it is like a transfer of energy. You're going from that I'm doing all this stuff to coming into your own,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
right,
attention
absolutely.
is mental energy. When I'm thinking about for expectation, I think that's also mental chatter. Like, what am I thinking about? What am I expecting from other people? So I'm gonna I'm gonna take a little detour and ask you something that
Yeah,
I have been thinking a little bit about. And it's this idea of if someone says in the future, and we'll just use something really easy like weight loss. In the future, instead of getting to, my high school graduation weight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my expectation lower so that I won't be disappointed if I don't get that weight, which is different than that's like weight loss number one, and then I'm going to go to weight loss number two and three. I think that's like almost lowering the hurdle. But when we
hmm,
say, I'm going to lower my expectations of other people or myself, I think that goes back to what you brought up, which is trusting yourself that if the expectation isn't met, that you'll be able to handle it in the future. And so, right? So
yeah.
that's different.
Yeah, and I would just add to that as long as when you kind of like bring down, so to speak, the goal, or say like, actually, I'm gonna set my expectation a little bit lower. As long as you feel like that's uh, yeah, juicy, I'll use the word again, but enough that it's gonna keep bringing me to like, oh yes, I'm aiming for that. And in the case of weight loss, I think it's so often that we think of this like, the number on the scale kind of thing,
Right?
which is like that is not actually
The point,
like
right?
that's not truly what matters because that's you alone in the in the bathroom looking at the scale.
Right, right.
It's
Looking at a
how,
number, that could be anything. Right,
right. So it's what is it? Like how will you show up in the world? What's the feeling? How will it change your life? How do you imagine it will change your life when you see that number on the scale?
right,
And tap into that.
right.
And I think that's a much easier thing to be sort of gradually excited about. Like I can feel excited about seeing some signs that I'm feeling a little bit more like that. And I'm showing up a little bit more, confident if that's what I want, for example.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
can kind of get the little reward, kind of like proof that you're on the right track
Yes.
during the whole process.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really, really powerful. And it's interesting because it's making me think about somebody else I was talking with who wanted to spend more time with his partner. Like they have younger children and it was hard to get time alone and they couldn't find sitters. And so they were feeling very deflated about that. And I think you referenced this a little bit, like sometimes the external environment will not align with your expectations.
Mhm.
So the question then becomes with what time you do have or with what what the external environment is how do you create an experience that is juicy, that is still aligned with your intention, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of the answer, at least, is when we get really clear on our intention, usually our values, like the core of what matters gets kind of brought to the surface. And then it's often less important that it sort of looks exactly the way that you initially imagined, as long as it has those kind of components. And
Yeah.
then and with components, it's so much easier to notice them in things
Mm,
and create something that has some of that,
right.
right? So,
Yes.
like some people, a lot of people are just like, oh, I love to travel. I wish I could travel more, which is, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But what about it? And then what if you don't have the budget to travel or the time to travel? But if you know what is it about travel that really excites me, you can probably do it in like, one next town over or like go, right? So if you get to kind of the
Yeah.
essence of what matters, you can find ways.
Yeah, the experience. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the most important things is that in the fifth model in the healthy leader operating system, we talk about how do you go from, annoyed or frustrated or anxious about something and in that moment to go into, what is good about this? What is positive about this? And to be able to untangle from that takes a lot of skill, a lot of mental, emotional, and physical skill.
Mhm.
And that's why time is and setting up time is so important because it allows you to say, okay, oh, in this moment I might feel like this, or in this moment when I plan to work on the book I might feel like this. And so then how do I change my experience of that? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
um did you have, yeah, what else about that?
No, no, good.
Yeah. Okay. So I want also, some people had some specific questions. I wanted to get into that. What about when someone feels the crush of too much? There's too much to do. What's your first move?
Yeah. So when there's just too much, most likely you're just like you're trying to just hold it all. There's just so much going on, and we get into like an overwhelm sort of. And we all know we're not at our best when we are in overwhelm. So I would say the first thing I would do in that case is to have them go through. So my middle of my book, I have this process of dump, divide, do. So essentially, it is just get it all out of your head. So get it down on paper in some form so that you're not, just trying to juggle it all and remember it all. And then the divide part, you essentially start fleshing out what's now versus later, what's must versus nice, like sort it out like a ball of yarn or whatever. You're kind of starting to see where things belong.
Mhm.
And oftentimes that's enough to get some clarity that, okay, I don't have to do the whole thing right now, actually.
Mm.
The, maybe I have whatever at work. I know that, we used to have multiple projects going on at the same time. It's not like you can just say, I'm only working on this. It's all happening. But I could say, for this project, the things that have to happen this week are these three things. The rest, I'm going to just park it over there. It's not, I don't have to kind of keep it in my mind. And then I suppose if you do that for all of the things you're involved in and you're still overwhelmed, then it's probably some prioritization that needs to happen, perhaps with, superiors or with can be even your expectation of just how much you're supposed to accomplish in a week.
Mm.
Or, I mean, there's something going on there that, whether you had a choice yourself or they were just kind of put on your plate,
Mhm.
it has to be taken care of because it's not sustainable.
That was one of my very favorite parts of the book as well, because you do a great job of getting into like, here's the system, here's the way for you to look at it. And then I also get that when you're going through this, there's going to be overwhelm. And I know what it feels like as well. And you talk about at some point, if there's too much to do, really, like you've gone through this process, and then you use the word choice. What's your, you got to make
Mm.
some choices. I mean, that's what prioritization is, right? Making a choice. And
Yes.
I think that sometimes is what we avoid.
Yes, exactly. And we want to, like, we can't say no to everything is important. Yeah. And then sometimes actually, like, it feels like I've sorted it all out. Nothing else can give. It truly is important. And then, like, one super simple question that I have helped some clients at least is to say, for this one thing, what bad thing will happen if I don't do it?
Hmm.
And that's sort of another layer of, okay, it's not life or death. It's not, okay, someone's going to be a little bit upset, but maybe I can even preempt that by resetting some expectations. You kind of open up like, actually, there are probably more choices than I thought there were
Love that
in how
question.
to manage it. Yeah.
Oh, that is brilliant. I love that question. And it's interesting because I was going to ask you, you mentioned earlier on about shoulding, saying I should do this, I shouldn't do
Mm.
that. I was going to ask you about that. And I think that what you just said kind of ties in with that a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah. So shoulding, I try to remove that word from my vocabulary unless I say like, okay, maybe the computer should be doing certain things.
Right.
But that I am never saying that someone else should do something. If someone said you should, whatever, it's like, and then instead of that, because I think that's all implied assumptions, judgments, all sorts of stuff in there. So
Mhm.
anytime I hear the word should, and I coach people on this as well, it's like, what can you replace that should with? You can, okay, so let's do an example here. I don't know, I should exercise today. Or I should exercise more often.
Mhm.
I mean, sort of maybe true, but if I think like I can exercise more often, yeah, I mean that's true. I will, like, am I willing to say I will, or I want to, or I get to even.
Yeah.
That's like I get to exercise more often. Wow, how is that true? Actually, I have the circumstances that I can do that. Not everyone does.
Right.
So just switching the language is so important from the shoulding.
Shoulding, no shoulding on yourself.
Shooting on yourself, exactly.
So there was something else that I wanted to ask you about that I thought was brilliant as well is help us understand what is the difference between the idea of tending to overestimate what we do in a day versus underestimating what we can do in a year.
Hmm. Or a decade.
Right?
Yeah, so I mean, the overestimating what we can do in a day and a week, I think we probably all, that's we experience that. It's like there's always more than we can do.
Yes, we do.
We right? But the bigger picture, uh, if we actually stay consistent with even something small, the way it adds up, which means you could, write a book in a couple of years. But if you don't start, if you don't actually get the little steps in there, it's
Mhm.
never going to happen. So I think the accumulation of small steps to actually something bigger, or wherever you are in your life, if you think, 1 decade from now, if you aim for something really big in a decade, and start working on making that possible now, getting the skills you need, experiences, whatever. I mean, I don't know depending on your goal, I suppose, but for the most part, we can probably be there in a decade.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I think that also ties into the 10 minutes. Like, what could you, I mean, we cleaned the basement out, we did it, and it actually didn't take that long.
yeah,
Yeah. Now I'm
right.
on my photos.
Yeah. Another beautiful thing with small tasks is
Mm,
when we have broken things down into small enough tasks, you can fit them in like a little bit here and there.
right.
So you're like, "Oh, I have 10 minutes before my next, whatever. Let me grab this little thing." And here we go.
And
One
it feels,
step or a little thing done.
right, right. And it feels good to get it done, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
before we close up, I wanted to, there was another story that you tell in here that I thought was really remarkable about you diving and feeling uncomfortable. And this personally hit home for me. My brother-in-law is a dive instructor, and diving makes me feel very, very nervous. So when you were telling that story, which I would love for you to share, it was really resonating with me. And then of course the big, big lesson behind it as well.
Yeah, sure. It's a pretty short story, but we were gonna go diving with the family, and we're out, and the water is pretty choppy. And so we're out on this motorboat, and the dive instructor is like, hustle, hustle, you have to get ready quickly and hop in the water because otherwise you're gonna get seasick. So we're all like, "Ooh," putting all the stuff on and double checking everything, get into the water, and we're just being kind of bobbed around and water is splashing, and I'm starting to feel nauseous. The vest, the BCD, is feels a little tight, and like I cannot go underwater. I'm feeling like I'm almost going to throw up. And then our dive master, she comes to me and said, like, "All right, what do you need?" It's like, "Oh, I don't feel like I can breathe." So she loosens my vest a little bit, and then she says, "You have to come down. It's calm down there."
Mm.
And then, I trusted her. Of course, she's my dive master. So I'm like, okay, so counterintuitive. When you feel like you can barely breathe, then you go up
Something in
the
your mouth,
water.
right? Yes, yes.
Exactly. And then I just go down like, a yard or something under the water, and it's like, oh, it's calm here. Because I'm under all that turbulence of the waves and wind and everything on the surface. And then, I could relax and just, go calm myself down a little bit and then start diving. But
Yeah.
and then what I kind of relate that to is when we have just so many things going on and we're pulled in all directions and it feels like, more and more and more and faster, 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 that we need to actually kind of go under, I guess, just take a breath, arrive. It is what it is. That might still be happening,
Mhm.
but I need to get myself to a place where I can actually be kind of reasonable, use the parts of my brain that can help me sort this out versus some frantic fight or flight kind of
Yeah.
mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a super powerful story because and you use the word counterintuitive in the book as well. It's like it
Mm.
feels counterintuitive to push away from the desk to, I think about I was speaking with a woman at a conference one time and she's in the bathroom and she's just super frenetic about what's going on. I was like, let's just not even be at the conference right now. Let's just take a breath and be present. It feels counterintuitive. It's so good.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's so counterintuitive because we're busy. There's so much that needs to be done. So I can't stop doing because then
Yes.
I'm even more behind. Or, like that's how you think. But
Yes.
then you're just kind of frantically all over the place. So, yeah,
And it's interesting to think
pulling back.
you just made me think of is that when I used to teach group fitness classes, one of the thing I would go from one, I'd teach at one country club and then I got to go to the next country club and I got to go to the next country club. And so I would put off this air as even as I'm coming in and I'm setting up the mic is like, I'm just like, okay, I got to get this done. And I realized after a while, I was like trying to say to people, don't talk to me because it was so
Mm,
important for me to be started on time and to get on time and, and
mm.
I was like, oh my goodness, I actually can be a few minutes late and experience this in a different way. And it feels totally different to everybody in the room and to me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And like talk about intention. Like, what's your intention as a teacher? What's your intention for your, class, the participants?
Right.
It's not to be like, oh my God, what's
Right. Right.
happening here?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You want to arrive, be present. Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is that when we think about it in that way, it's kind of like what you were talking about. You create a little bit of space and you get curious and think, oh, well, maybe I can actually start this next class and make it start at 9:15 instead of 9 o'clock. Or,
Yeah.
and if you're
Yeah.
not paying attention, you maybe won't be able to change that environment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great point too. Something I wanted to mention. Sometimes like people get into like they're always too busy and they're still going to be busy and keep thinking that, oh, next month finally it's going to be better. And then in the same situation. So sometimes we have already committed to a lot of things. We can maybe manage expectations to some extent, but we might just kind of have to power through a bit in the most immediate,
Hmm.
but make sure you also get ahead. How will I not be in the same situation in 2 weeks, in 1 month? What do I need to remember to say no to or manage expectation around? And that's, again, that curiosity is like, what tends to happen?
Right.
Oh, and then I already have a full plate, and then someone always comes with this additional thing. Oh, maybe I purposely plan so I have a little margin. My plate is not full because there's always something coming in. Or like,
Right.
what happens? What tends to happen? How can I be ready for that?
And I love that because what you're doing is you're using that reflection piece again. And then you're also using for what didn't go well in the past for wisdom, right? And not to beat yourself up, but just say, let me use this discerningly. Yeah.
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 All right.
Yeah,
Well,
because no wonder that we end up in these situations. Like, no wonder you say yes when a super important something comes in, but yeah, you have to kind of backtrack and see where did that go wrong actually? Like, what would I have done differently, or what will I do differently in that situation in the
and
future?
right. And the interesting thing about that is that when we're doing that chronically, then that's when we're now we're not being healthy, right? And now we're getting into burnout. And if we are
Mhm.
managing our time, our experience of time in a different way, then we can avoid that. So I have one final wrap-up question. I want to ask you if you could leave our group here with one practical takeaway, a small, powerful shift that they could apply this week to reclaim their experience of time, what would that be?
Well, I've already talked about the weekly reflection and planning, so then I'll throw in another thing instead, because that would be my one thing, I think.
Okay.
the rich experience of time, come to your senses, like quite literally come to your senses more often. Just right here, taking your environment. It can be like a micro little thing, but whatever can help you get out of busy, busy, busy all the time. Just like, okay, I'm here. I can feel my body. Yeah. And the breath, just that like arriving, keep arriving.
Arriving in the moment. Keep arriving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is where life happens in the moment, in the now.
Beautiful.
Because,
I could feel my energy. Thank you so much for sharing, the tools for sure, but really the experience, a new way of experiencing time. You clearly model that. And I want to say thank you all for being here. A huge thank you to each of you. And to let you know that this experience doesn't end here. Next month, we are going to be exploring confidence. Specifically, we'll be talking about self-confidence. And we're going to speak with another expert who has taught at West Point and written several leadership books. And how do we show up confidently? How do we experience confidence and time in a way that is memorable, in a way that will make us feel like we are living our lives, as you say, Ulrika, we're being present here. So thank you so
mm,
much again for being here and for bringing your energy,
thank
your
you.
presence,
It
and
was fun. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
absolutely, you exceeded all of my expectations.
That's
Thank
good.
you again.
But I feel energized.
Yay! Great, great. And thank you to everyone here. Go forth and create a healthy day and a very rich experience.